Thank you so much for watching. This is Syrettah of Voodoo Astrology, taking a look at the aspects for this week, starting Sunday, January 21st. We are coming off of what last week would have been a quite intense week. It's the aspects that are usually there, especially with Pluto changing signs. Most astrologers consider it to be like the most intense day of the year when this particular aspect shows up. And I don't want to lean, I think, too heavy into like the aspects or the degrees. Obviously, people can take astrology classes if that's what they're interested in. But I do want to share, as I'm looking like at a chart, just, essentially what I'm using as a reference point. But last week would have been intense, in conclusion. Last week would have been an intense one for a lot of people. There is a brewing and things happening, shifting, especially as Pluto is now shifted into Aquarius from having been in Capricorn, which has been huge, not just for us individually, but collectively with what we see happening all over the world, with injustices, with people getting tired, people getting fed up, and emotions that may have been buried or maybe haven't been honored are moving towards the surface. I think that we are seeing a reckoning of intense feelings, of circumstances that have been unfair, and a kind of a willingness or to acknowledge that it's not going to be tolerated moving forward. Or I won't say that, or maybe just a recognition that this is not sustainable, that the circumstance that we find ourselves in may be causing pain, or even observing may be causing pain or seeming painful to someone or some involved party. And as a result, really understanding what may not, be sustainable. Now, with having this intense aspect from last week, though, I think some aspects sometimes show up very cognitively, sometimes very psychically, kind of subconscious things that are happening. And we are building towards a full moon this Thursday in Leo. The way I interpret it, I won't even get into just yet the fact that it's going to oppose Pluto, which is a whole nother issue. But before that, just, honoring, I think, the fact that this full moon is in Leo. And Leo feels strongly, feels deeply, and this will be felt. This will be a time where feelings of injustice, feelings of things being unfair, feeling that this isn't working is felt, not just observed, not just maybe suspected or maybe speculating, but truly feeling in your being. And I think that for anything to move forward, the emotions must be felt. It's one thing to be aware of an emotion and a person felt like this or that, or it seemed like this or that, but to truly sit with where you are and how you feel, I think gives you a little bit of advantage here. Given that this is a full moon in Leo, you won't have much of a choice, or none of us will have much of a choice. The strength, I think, that comes with Leo in the interpretation is really about the vulnerability. And if you don't know how you feel, or you don't have the courage to admit how you feel, that strength isn't really accessible. It tends to be projection. It tends to be doing other things, kind of dancing around the issue. Well, this full moon gives all of us an opportunity to get real about those gut feelings and not just acknowledge them, but honor them, to think about what that looks like, With that, like I said, Leo doesn't leave room for us to dance around the issue. It's felt. There is a theme of love, which there's always a theme of love, but I think that here while it's a full moon and there's an opposition to Pluto, meaning there is another person that we're relating to, or there's another party involved in, I think, the realizations that will come as a result of these feelings. But love becomes the theme of, I think, like definitions of love. Where are you with what love looks like, right? Your love languages, and not just the superficial aspect, but what it means to you. What makes me feel loved? How am I getting in the way of that? Or how am I perpetuating something different than what I truly feel? These are just prompts. I think, not I think, well, they are prompts, but these are just prompts for drilling down if you're interested. If you're interested in getting to what's going on maybe with you before you get to the point of projecting or trying to interpret it through another, this is the homework we can do, if you will, that helps us, I think, bring something to the table, and keeps us out of that place where we go and it's you and it's how you're doing me and what's not, fair, but also looking at, like, how am I factoring in to my experience? How am I factoring into my love experience, even romantically, right? It takes two. How am I not communicating? Or what I'm communicating maybe not being honored or not being listened to. These are things that, like I said, you can do, I think, on the independent end of things, because when the emotions sometimes are so intense, you're feeling so strong, it may not be as easy to access the thought process. It may not be as easy to just know where you are or even maybe verbalize it, but I think that reaching some of those conclusions with oneself can help everybody. Now that's Thursday, obviously the full moon, but it is going to stand across from Pluto, which is going to make an already intense situation even more intense and certainly bring it to the surface. This is where I think we see things that we try to dance around, and maybe things that for the greater good we may not acknowledge or we may not want to discuss. But the experiences around it may be so strong that it will, kind of come out. This is really intense. With it being in Leo, there can be an inclination to what people consider drama. Things are magnified in general. Also, we have this T-square that's building up with Jupiter, and it again brings things bigger, kind of makes things larger than life. And while that may not be necessarily the reality, it may be what's necessary for us to address things. It may be what's necessary to bring it to the surface in a way that demands our attention and demands action, or a course of action, maybe a plan for a course of action, if that's what's necessary. So I try not to challenge in this way. I don't want to challenge what is or what will be and say, oh, it's dramatic and, it's not that big of a deal. It will feel, it's exactly what it feels like. And even if in that moment the feeling is intense, and later we maybe, look at things from a different aspect and decide that maybe it didn't need to be all of that, that moment or that dramatic interpretation may have been necessary to aid us to getting where we might not have been able to do so in a calm manner, if that makes sense. So I am one of the astrologers that is of the mindset as Jupiter as a benefic, and even no matter what aspect it's making. And the reason I feel that way is because when you have so many elements, so many moving pieces, we have, these elements of vulnerability, people feeling that they have been done wrong or things weren't fair. which is very valid. I mean, and even sometimes we've not been fair to ourselves in the way we've gone about things. Again, very valid. My choice is to focus on how this benefits us. And with Jupiter in this mix, even though we're going towards a T-square, essentially we are going to a place where we can see how the things that are transpiring, even the intensity of these moments that we have, are opening the door to a more authentic, honest way of functioning, a way that truly is honoring how we feel. And in doing so, we can't lose. We can't. I mean, it's, I know it may be a little bit overly optimistic for some people, and I totally understand that, but this is the path that I choose and the way that I look at it, and I see value in doing so. I think that as intense as this week will be, we do have to look at our interactions with others. Things may be playing out as others are mirroring us in ways that are positive, maybe not so positive, but it's still mirroring. And looking honestly in the mirror, it has its benefits. Essentially, it is necessary to get to this place of authentic love, even if it may not be a result of, like, especially in the context of like a romantic relationship. Maybe it's not that it's a happily ever after or everything is wonderful, but if I'm honoring truly how I feel, and I'm truly honoring the feelings that are coming up for me, especially as intense as they are, I essentially am moving towards greater love. I'm moving in the direction of authenticity and relating to myself in an honest way. And I think that's a pretty beautiful thing. From there, I need to mention Uranus, having been retrograde for the past 5 months, will be going direct on Saturday. I think that even with a full moon, we will also be under the influence of Uranus going stationary and then preparing to go direct. Being that it's outer planet, it takes a little bit of a while, but I think here is where we're going to see the light bulb. I think that even with the intensity, with things maybe getting, like I said, maybe a little larger than life or seeming so, here is where I think we're going to have maybe more than one light bulb moment, and that clarity about like what's been going on, what seems so dramatic, what was so intense, and exactly how we feel that we should move forward. And no, I will correct that, not we feel. And the reason why I correct that is because Uranus presents in a very different way than Leo in the intensity of the heart feelings, and not to discard those at all. They're very valid, but Uranus hits like lightning. It's that shock. It's that quick, all of a sudden, I got it. And I don't know where the hell it came from. Sometimes that's what it takes. The things that have been happening over the past 5 months have been a lot, and to try to go back and pinpoint things and make a conclusion and make the appropriate way to move forward can be a little bit overwhelming. The world is changing. We are changing and evolving at a very fast rate. We are no longer in the age where we can really even compare our situations to our parents in some ways, or even to past generations. This is a new experience in a lot of ways. And I think that Uranus honors that. Uranus sheds that light, comes through like lightning and cuts through all the bullshit, everything that's been happening, how people feeling, what's going on, what's not going on, the unfortunate circumstances, the suffering that we're experiencing collectively and individually, to show us the way forward, to show us exactly what this future is going to look like. And we need that kind of vision if we're going to move ahead, if we're going to keep going in the midst of all the things that we're experiencing, if we're going to keep swimming, we have to know our destination. And that for me is how I see Uranus going forward on Saturday. We'll already be under the influence, over the full moon. And so some people may, definitely like here in North America or different places, may experience that in combination of all the intensity. I just don't want to allude to it being like this sequential experience because that's not something that I can predict or would even try to. The reality is that Uranus hits with those light bulb moments, how it hits, when it hits, doing things, not doing things, comes completely out of the blue. And I think that's exactly what we'll need. I think it's, like I said, I think it's a hopeful thing. I think as we go to this T-square with Jupiter, it's going to lead to the growth and expansion that we've all been waiting for. So, peace to you this week. Hang in there.